Hi and welcome back to the Journey to Nebula Sew Along. I'm Julie Herman of Jawbreaker Quilts and I'll be your guide on this journey. This week we are working on the Jawbreaker Pillow pattern. Today we're going to focus on sewing strip sets and then cutting triangles from those strip sets, and we're going to use either the Hex N More, the Sidekick, or the Super Sidekick. All three rulers work for today. So first thing we need to do is get our strip set sewn, so I'll see you on over at the sewing machine. Before we get started on any cutting for Jawbreaker, the first thing that we need to do is piece together our strip sets. So you have 2.5 inch strips, gonna pair them up in whatever combos you think will look best on your pillow. And we're gonna take those 2.5 inch strips, sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam, and that's gonna give us a 4.5 inch strip set. And this skill is very important. We're gonna use it a few times in Nebula, which is why we're practicing it now. And it's really important that we get an accurate 4.5 inch strip set so that all of our pieces that we cut that are 4.5 inch shapes are accurate. So in the pattern, it has you sew the strip sets together like this. But one tip that I often give when I teach in person is when you know what shape you're gonna cut, in this case a triangle, to avoid waste, I offset my strips by about 1 inch. And so I will get that diagonal line where if I had them up here, I'm just gonna waste more yellow. Depending on what length your strips are, every strip's a different length, you may yield an extra piece at the end. So I always suggest offsetting them. So we're just gonna put our strips together, right sides together, and same stitch settings that we've been working with, which is scant 1/4 inch and 2.5 stitch length. And go ahead and sew. So I'm gonna sew the entire length of this, and I'm gonna press this open. Before we jump into cutting, just wanted to hop over to the ironing board real quick, give a quick refresher on pressing versus ironing. It's very important that we press this strip set open because of how the pieces will fit together in the pillow. So if you have a iron finger, it's helpful. I already used my seam rollers to start to get it open, and now I'm going to press. And then the reminder is pressing is up and down. This is ironing. We don't want to iron. We're going to stretch our strip if we do that and distort things. So we want to just lift as we go and walk our way down the strip so that we have our seam nicely pressed open. And I tend to press with steam. I don't have it on right now because of the volume, but if you're comfortable pressing with steam, that helps out even more. So go ahead and press all of the seams in your strip sets open before we hop on over to cutting. Now that we have our strip set sewn and pressed, we're going to begin cutting our triangles. And as I mentioned, it's very important that this measures 4.5 inches. Often a good idea to just pull out a ruler, especially in the beginning, and double check, make sure that this is 4.5 inches. Adjust your 1/4 inch seam allowance at the sewing machine when sewing your strip sets, if necessary, if this ends up too big or too small. Now we can use any of the 3 rulers. We're gonna start with the Hex N More because that's the one the pattern's written for. And the reason the pattern's written for that is because that was the first ruler that existed back when the pattern came out. So our first cut, we offset at the machine, and now you'll see why, because we go to put our ruler on, and instead of having a big chunk of orange that we're wasting and a small chunk of yellow, we just have a small little piece of each one. So we want to cut on either side of the ruler, and it's never smart to cut on the wrong side or cut towards yourself. So what I suggest doing is making this cut, pulling this away, and then I will rotate this piece around and the ruler around. Line it back up and cut. Now, this ruler, the triangles are all at the bottom, and we're doing a 4.5 inch triangle. So we want the 4.5 inch solid line on the edge of our strip, the point at the other end, and there's a dashed line below the 2.5 inch triangle words, and that should land on your seam. It's kind of a third extra little check. And so we can use the Hex N More to walk our way down the strip. Oh, close it, there we go. or we can use one of the other rulers. And in this case, I think if you have the small Sidekick, that one tends to be the easiest to handle due to its size. So let me show you. Stick these aside. The small Sidekick, the triangles are right here. And so we're going to line up the 4.5 inch triangle line, that dashed line on our seam, and cut. And then for our next cut, we want to take our ruler and we want to flip it towards us so that it's upside down. So we can't read the word Sidekick. And again, we're going to line up this line and the seam line. And cut. And we can walk our way down the strip. Same process with the Super Sidekick. And if you are a lefty, you'll have it the other way, and you'll line up your ruler like this. Make sure I'm in the camera. Sorry about that. Line it up like this and cut and work your way down the strip. And then one other little tip that I often give out with the Sidekick ruler when I teach in person is some people get confused flipping it to the wrong side. So I'll show you another little trick you can do. It doesn't work with all the sizes as well, but it works really well with the 4.5, which is what we're doing right now. So I'm going to line up my triangle and cut. And instead of flipping, I'm going to turn. And I'm going to line up the bottom. Now I don't have that double check in the middle, so if that double check's been a help for you, don't start cutting this way, but some people find it helpful and you don't need to cut that notch off. So we're just going to cut straight here. And sometimes when you've sewn a long strip set of 2.5 inch strips, you can't always get them super pressed out well in the middle, and sometimes things start to get a little wonky. If you go to line up your ruler and this line are no longer a good 60-degree angle and you're kind of like this, just go ahead, turn your strip, line things up, and cut yourself a new edge. There's nothing wrong with that, and you have enough wiggle room in the length to cut yourself a fresh edge here and there. That will allow you to make sure that your triangles are exactly how you want them to be. So cut the full length of your strip set as well as the rest of the strip sets, and then you will have your pieces will start to come together. And there is a border on this project. I don't suggest cutting the border this week. Suggest waiting until next week when we work on layout and piecing, but go ahead and cut your entire length of your strip set. So once you're done cutting, take a nice little picture of your stack of triangles and post your cutting progress to Instagram and use the hashtag #JourneyToNebula to be entered in this week's giveaway. If you have any questions, leave a comment wherever you're watching this video. And don't forget, we have our community Facebook group. Lots of people in there to help answer your questions as well. Look forward to seeing you here back next week to work on piecing our Jawbreaker pillow.